All right. So, welcome to the show, everyone. Today's show you're watching is Angkor Wat, brought to you by Learn Around the World. All right. So, we use Kahoot during our Geo show episodes, and you can play along. Again, that is the wrong Kahoot ID. It is 153140. Again, 153140. I just put it in your Kahoot chat, so you should be able to find it there. So Geo Show is a geography-based show. That means location matters. So let's find out, where are we going today, explorers? Well, if we spin our big blue ball around, we're going to the other side of the planet, and we are going to Southeast Asia, to a country called Cambodia. So if I come back out a little bit, so if you aren't quite sure where Cambodia is, so to the west of Cambodia is Thailand, if you've heard of Thailand. To the east of Cambodia is Vietnam, so I'm shading these in red. And to the north, we'll use a different color, is Laos. So those are the bordering countries to Cambodia. And this is the country that we're headed to on our virtual field trip. Specifically, we are going to the northwest region of Cambodia. So we'll zoom in, and we're going to an area near a town or a city called Siem Reap today. But in the ancient times in Cambodia, so in the years at the height of the Khmer Empire. So the Khmer Empire is probably the greatest empire you've never heard of if you're living in the US. And there is a big structure of old temples and cities and ruins near Siem Reap. And we're going to visit the most famous one of those today, which is Angkor Wat. And so this is a depiction of the Khmer Empire. So if you remember those countries that I just told you that are bordering today's Cambodia, so I'm going to draw in blue. This is the border of Cambodia today. So all of this area that you see in red here, so going up all the way really deep into Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and even into current day China a little bit, was the Khmer Empire. So it was a really big empire in Southeast Asia, and they were really powerful, especially during the years 800 to 1432 AD, roughly. Cool fun fact about Cambodia is that this is their flag, and it's the only flag in the world that has a structure on it. And can anyone guess what structure this is? Well, if you guessed Angkor Wat, because that's where we're going today, you are correct. So this is a silhouette of Angkor Wat, and this is the depiction on their flag. So cool fun fact for you there today. And we're going to do a brief introduction because Angkor Wat was built for a Hindu god. So really briefly, again, this is the Hindu religion is very complex, but really briefly, we're going to go over some of the Hindu gods so we can kind of understand who this temple was built for. So in the Hindu religion, there are three kind of top gods. One is Brahma. Can everyone say Brahma? Awesome. Vishnu and Shiva. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva were the three. They're the Trinity gods. So over here to the right is a depiction of all three of them together. And if we break them down and look at each one of them individually, so the first one we have here on the screen is Brahma, and Brahma was the creator god. And Brahma, you'll notice I'm going to throw up a couple different images of the gods just so you get an idea. Their artwork shows them in many different ways. And this is similar to any religion that you look around the world. Look at different paintings. If you're a Christian, for example, of Jesus, like not everyone paints them the exact same way. Same thing here. And so Brahma generally is depicted with 4 heads or 4 faces and 4 arms. And they're usually kind of the the virtues of each god. They're usually holding an item in each hand that kind of symbolizes one of their virtues. And this is, again, just another depiction of Brahma. Here we have Shiva. Shiva was the destroyer god. So if there was an earthquake or a volcano, any kind of natural disaster, that was attributed to Shiva. And again, Shiva right here is depicted with 4 arms. In this one's quite unique. Shiva is not depicted with 4 arms. And just as a fun fact side note, I'm going to circle, this is Vishnu's son here, which is Ganesh. And many people, this is probably the most popular, if you go into some stores, you'll see lots of times there's little statues. Probably the most popular in the U.S. anyway is Ganesh. So that's the son of Shiva, and this is the Hindu god with the elephant head with 4 arms. You may have seen, if you've seen any of them, most of you have probably seen Ganesh before. And then Vishnu. So Vishnu is the protector god. And Vishnu is the one we want to highlight today because Angkor Wat was built to honor Vishnu, the protector god. And again, this is just a different depiction of Vishnu with his 4 arms there. So that's just a very, very brief overview of the 3 Hindu gods, the 3 Trinity gods, the top gods in the Hindu religion, and an intro to the location that we're visiting today, which is in northwest Cambodia, which during the time of Angkor Wat, when people were living there, this was the Khmer or Khmer Empire. And when we look at the word Angkor Wat, Angkor means capital or city. So it was the capital city of the Khmer Empire. And if we look at Wat, Wat today means temple. So it's the city temple if we break down the words of Angkor Wat. All right, so we're going to jump right into it and visit Cambodia in just 1 minute. But first, I like to give shout outs on the show. So I'm going to give our first random shout out today to St. Lawrence School in Utica, Michigan. Welcome to the show, guys. Great to have you back. We also want to give another shout out to Christopher School in Gilroy, California. So welcome to all of you and anyone else that's watching the show today as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in it and head to Cambodia. So I hope everyone has their virtual passports with them today. And we're going to start the trip off in a very common form of transportation, which is we're going to jump in a tuk-tuk. So if you've never heard of a tuk-tuk or seen a tuk-tuk before, they come in various varieties, if you will. They can be like the one we see here, which seem to be very common in Cambodia, which is a motorcycle with a little trailer hitch. And on the trailer this is where you would sit. So you get back into the tuk-tuk. In Thailand, so a lot of people are familiar with the ones in Thailand, they're built as one kind of vehicle. So it's not a trailer on a motorcycle. It's like a 3-wheeled vehicle that you actually get in with the little handlebars up front. So they're called tuk-tuks in both places. And this is a tuk-tuk driver in Cambodia. And this is a very common form of transportation, very cheap form of public transportation. So we are going to take a tuk-tuk. Here's another shot of a tuk-tuk on a busy street. So we're actually going to jump into one from our location. We're going to start off in Siem Reap and head to Angkor Wat to see the sunrise. So let's do it. So we're starting off really early, still dark outside. And we're going to drive by a market, so you'll see lots of people getting an early start to the day. So Angkor Wat is the temple complex. We are visiting Angkor Wat, the main one today. However, if you remember from the satellite image, there were many. Each king of the Khmer Empire You know, it's kind of like the Egyptian pyramids or even the Mayans. Each new ruler wanted to build their legacy. They wanted to build bigger and better temples. So, so Angkor Wat was only the capital city for a short period of time. A different city was the capital city for a short period of time, but they're all in the same general location. All right, once we get our ticket, we're going to continue on into the national park. All right, and we're heading up to the edge of the moat. So we're going to get a better shot of this in a minute, but here's the moat with the silhouettes of Angkor Wat behind it. Now, you may have remembered on the flag, right here, this is the main temple. So this is when you see a picture of Angkor Wat, this is what you're going to see. But it's a very, very big complex. And this right here is called West Gate. And some of these tops of the temples have fallen in over the years. Now, some of them have been reconstructed, and we'll get a better look of that as we go into the temple. But first, we're going to watch the sunrise over Angkor Wat. So we're at West Gate. So we are looking at Angkor Wat. So we're looking east. So the sun rises behind the temple. And it wasn't a great day for a sunrise. But lots of people, it's a very common tourist activity to come here and watch the sunrise. Now here we get to see our first interaction with some local wildlife. So they have monkeys here in Cambodia and around much of Southeast Asia. And one of the things that you guys may have heard if you are a big hiker is, especially leave no trace, we like to say, you know, a fed bear is a dead bear. And what that means is you don't want to feed wildlife, because what happens is wildlife, when they get used to human food, then they start coming around. And it's not really a good idea if a big bear is coming around campsites looking for food. Kind of same idea here. You don't really want to feed wildlife, because what happens in this case, we saw this man, he was getting too close to this monkey, and this monkey went up and actually hit them. Now, you may not know this, but monkeys are a huge carrier of rabies. So even though if you go one day to Angkor Wat, you may want to think twice of getting up close and feeding a monkey by hand, because it is pretty common for people to get bit by these monkeys. And if they have rabies, then that is a very serious health issue. So you don't want to do that. Other things to kind of think about when we visit areas of the world is the impacts we have not only on wildlife, but the local people. So here we get coming up. So we're going to see a young girl that's, and I assume maybe her brother, maybe not, we don't know, but both of them were selling postcards. And this is very common to see at tourist locations and landmarks in Cambodia, is you often see children going around selling souvenirs. Now, my question for everyone is, if we're going to stop it right here. So this is a young gentleman trying to sell me a postcard. And again, we like to play on our Kahoot. So we already have some people sign in. So my first survey question for you all today is, we're going to bring up our Kahoots, because you're going to get your first survey question. Don't worry if you're not logged in yet, because our first couple of questions are only worth, or not worth points, I should say. So they are not worth points. So you can go ahead and get signed in. Again, that Kahoot pin is in the center of your Kahoot screen. And it is 153140 today. Again, 153140. We're going to go ahead and start with our first survey question today. Again, if you're not logged in yet and you're having trouble, don't worry. Go to kahoot.it on any device, any browser, web browser, on a mobile device or your computer. Open up another window and you can play along with our Kahoot game. This one is not worth points, so we're going to keep the show going and go ahead and play with our first 5 players that we have in. And my first question for everyone today is a survey question. Again, not worth points. And should you buy things from kids at Angkor Wat or any of the famous locations in Cambodia? So red, yes, blue, no. What do you think? Red, yes. Blue, no. Okay, so some of you saying yes, one person says no, and you know this is just I bring up this question for everyone as a question to think about. It's a question to think about, and we need to think about when you travel to other places, what is your impact not only on the environment or with wildlife, but also with people. And the reason I bring it up is because in Cambodia, there's a big issue with, especially around tourism sites, kids can make more money than their parents. It's a very, very poor country, and kids make more money begging than their parents do. And so for that, issue, many times kids are held out of school so they can go beg because they'll make more money than their parents will. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you do need to think about these things when you go to certain places around the world, because you know, what is better for a child is to not go to school or to go to school. And I know it's a hard, it's a difficult question. I don't think there's a 100% right answer, because at the end of the day, what's the number one thing we need, right? Is we need food, water, shelter. And if this is the way that their family can get food, it's hard to blame anyone for that. But it's something we do want to keep in mind when you do travel to locations around the world. There may be adverse or bad impacts for just doing something as simple as buying a postcard. So just something to think about, food for thought, as we continue through our exploration of Angkor Wat today. All right, so we're going to go back to Angkor Wat, and so we some of you just may or may not have bought a postcard, and we're going to start continuing. And we're going to, as we see the sun come up a little bit, it was kind of a bad day for a sunset when we were there, but let's go ahead and get a shot. Right now, we are located at the west end of the moat. So I'm going to point out here, so this is the moat that goes around Angkor Wat. It's about, from, if you were to go in a straight line all the way around the square, it's about 4 miles long, and you can actually see it from space. So that's pretty impressive. And so currently we are over here on the west side of the moat, and this temple faces west. And this is kind of unique because most temples in this part of the world face east, but Angkor Wat actually faces west, and that's because it's built for Vishnu. Many of the other temples are built for Shiva, which generally face east. And so what we're going to do is we are going to walk across the moat, and then we're going to visit the west gate. So this is the main entrance to the city, and we'll explore around a little bit, but I'm going to highlight here, this is the actual temple. So the space between the moat and the temple was where the city was. So these structures have long been gone because they were all built of wood. Only the main religious temple and the main city gates were built of stone. So that's what we are going to look at and focus on today. So the city itself, when it was booming with people, some guess that it had around 1 million people, and some scholars believe it was a little less, around 700 to 800,000 people. All right, so we are going to first today visit the west gate before we head to the main temple. We're going to go in the right side of the west gate because there's a statue of Vishnu we're going to check out. And then before we continue to the main temple, there's a little fun fact or fun piece of trivia on the back side of this gate that we're going to check out as well. And then after we check out the gate, we'll head over. Welcome to Angkor Wat, the mother of all temples. It's thought to be the largest religious monument in the world. It was built in the 12th century, and it was never actually completed. The layout of the entire complex consists of a 3-level temple with both wooded and open areas between the main temple and the moat. The moat is 190 meters wide, and we're going to start today's virtual field trip by crossing the long causeway towards the West Gate. The West Gate is an impressive structure in its own right, but for our purposes, the most interesting talking points are found on the south end of the gate. Right now we're inside the West Gate, and I'm standing beside a very large statue of Vishnu, which is one solid piece of sandstone. This statue is really unique because Vishnu is depicted with 8 arms. Normally he's depicted with 4 arms. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that 3 arms were broken off, and after the restoration project, 3 new arms were added to the statue. All right, so one other thing I want to point out here, because this can get confusing as we make our way through the temple. And if you remember, who was the god that this temple was built for? Vishnu. And what religion is Vishnu a god for? That's right, if you said the Hindu religion. However, today it's an active Buddhist temple. So it is not a Hindu temple today, it is a Buddhist temple. And if we look at the head here, this is actually a head of Buddha. So this is a Buddha head that's been put on the body of Vishnu. And so that is one kind of fun fact about Angkor Wat today. Now, the Buddhist religion and the Hindu religion, at least in its, they both are religions that were born in India, and they're very often sometimes have some similarities to them, but they are 2 different religions, and today it is a Buddhist temple. Statue is really unique because so we're going to check out one other thing inside the West Gate. It's depicted with 4 arms. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that 3 arms. There's one last interesting thing I want to show you in the West Gate before we head out. Here we have some evidence of the sad recent history of Cambodia. We can see bullet holes all in the wall. And if you look closely, you can actually see a bullet that remains in the wall. Let's look at this wall here. This is one of the angels. There are over 1,700 of these all throughout the temple. And every one of them shows the angels smiling with their mouths closed. Except for one little gem hidden in a corner behind the West Gate. And I want to show it to you now. So let's go check it out. Alright, now we're on the back corner of the West Gate. And I want to show you the only angel in the entire temple complex that shows the teeth of the angel as she's smiling. Now there's many theories to why this is the only one, but in all likelihood it's because the artists who were making these just put a little touch of their personality on this temple before they were finished. Alright, so we're going to get our first shot up close of some of the stone here, because this is very impressive architecture that the Khmer people did here at this temple. If you can see, here's some lines of these blocks that are connecting. Look how well these fit together. Now, there was no mortar used on this temple. So all of these blocks, this sandstone was cut exactly to fit together. And then we can see once the blocks were made, then the artists came in, the stone workers, and actually carved out all of the reliefs and engravings throughout the temple. And this is the only angel out of over 1,700 of them in the temple that actually shows the teeth of the angel. So we can see that there. And in all likelihood, it's just because this is a hidden spot in the temple, and whoever was the stone artist that made this one probably just did it as a kind of to leave their mark on the temple. To reach the main temple, leaving the West Gate, we have another long walk. And this walk is over the Rainbow Bridge. It's called the Rainbow Bridge because in the Hindu culture, rainbows were a bridge leading from the earth to the heavens. And Angkor Wat
was originally built as a replica of the Hindu heavens.
So we just finished the long walk from the west gate to the main temple. Now this area was for living, and from this point forward was only used for religious purposes. If you notice, on each side of the stairways to every entrance of the temple, there's a lion, and the purpose of these lions was to protect the entranceways. Let's go check it out.
All right, so remember there are 3 levels to the temple, and we're going to check out all 3 of them. We are going to kind of start right here at this the west side. We're going to walk around. These are called the galleries. So this entire wall, this is a covered hallway that goes around the entire first level, on the outside of the first level. And along the entire galleries, it's the longest reliefs in the world. So from one end to the other, we're going to get a better look at these on the ground. But these are just one long continuous relief. Now they tell the story, different stories. They tell part of the religious stories, and they also tell the story of the king who built this temple, or who commissioned building this temple. So we're going to start off on the south galleries, and then we were going to make our way through the south entrance into level 1. Now level 1, this is mostly the ground in here. You're going to see this is all grass. If you were a normal citizen of the city, of the empire, this is where you would come to worship. You would not be allowed into levels 2 or 3 in the temple. And that was designated for higher people up in the in society. So we're going to enter into level 2, and then we'll go to the east side. And the east side today is how you can enter into the 3rd level. Now the 3rd level, if you were here during the times of the Khmer Empire, you would not be allowed into the 3rd level. This was only reserved for the highest priest. And again, this was built as a reflection of the heavens. And the center of, you're going to see, we'll pull it out a little bit, the shot there, but you'll get to see there's 5 main temples on top of level 3. And this is supposed to represent the mythical mountains, and the center one is Mount Meru. So if you're familiar with Greek mythology, and you know Mount Olympus is where the gods live in Greek mythology, kind of similar in that respect, where Mount Meru is where the gods lived. So that's where Vishnu would have been, and so they built this to represent Mount Meru. And as we're going to go back and spin around on our satellite image. This is, again, the front side of the temple, so the west side. There is 1 level. So remember over here, this is level 1. On each side of level 1 in the front, there were 2 big libraries, and there's a room connecting level 1 and level 2. Now today, this is called the Room of 1,000 Buddhas. So we'll visit the Room of 1,000 Buddhas as well, and you'll see why it's called the Room of 1,000 Buddhas. All right, so let's go down and check it out.
Right now we're standing outside of the level 1 galleries. Level 1 is completely surrounded by these galleries that include reliefs that depict Hindu legends and myths, and also the account of the king that built the temple. Let's head inside.
The stories are beautifully carved into the sandstone, and you can tell which galleries gets the most visitor traffic because people have touched the walls and they've become polished. The level 1 courtyard has a massive library on the south and north end of the west side. This courtyard was used for the common people to come and pray and worship.
All right, so we're going to head up to level 2.
Right now, we're at level 2 of Angkor Wat. In this level, was only set aside for higher class people to worship. So none of the common people were allowed to come up from level 1. And if we look around, it's beautifully decorated. And right in the center of this level, we see level 3, which represents Mount Meru at the center and surrounded by the other mountains of the Himalayas. And the only people that were allowed on level 3 were the high priest and the king.
All right, so here we get some evidence. Remember earlier I said that the temple has been largely reconstructed. So that's a big, maybe a new vocabulary word for you guys. So many times in archaeology, so there are reconstruction projects. So these are projects where many times these ancient temples, many of the stones, many of these temples have been built in parts of the world where there are many earthquakes and volcanoes, and as a result, over the years, they fall down. Remember, no mortar was holding these blocks together, so they were just stacked on top of each other, so it was gravity and the way that they were fitted together. And so when they fell down, many of the towers have crumbled, and if we look back up here, so what's happening is they're actually reconstructing. These are the blocks that have fallen down from this level 2 corner tower here. Many of the main ones have been put back together already. You can see how they're kind of laid out. It's kind of like a giant game of Tetris. All right, so you can see to go up into level 3, they let a certain amount of people up at a time. And remember that currently this is an active Buddhist temple. So we're going to see some people that are come here for actual worship purposes. And because it's an active temple, you need to wear long pants. And this is for any, and this makes, a lot of times I get the question a lot, well, why do you need to wear long pants and cover your shoulders? So you don't want to wear tank tops. And this is, think about it. If you, no matter what religion you're in, have you ever been to any church where you can just walk in with shorts, flip-flops, and a tank top? And even if it is technically okay, people are probably going to look at you odd, because most people wear their best attire, or they cover their skin when they go into churches and temples. Same idea here. So it's an active temple. So if you ever come here yourself, it's a really hot place. So just make sure, maybe you, I wear zip-off pants a lot, zip-off short pants, so I can throw on long pants if I'm ever wearing shorts to go into a temple to visit. And so we're going to go up, and so these are more modern steps with a hand railing and nice wooden steps. The original steps are really steep and dangerous, and you can't climb up those any longer. So we're heading up to level 3. Again, this is Mount Meru, to mimic Mount Meru. And inside level 3, so Mount Meru is the center tower, temple, and on all 4 corners of the level, there were these pools. Now, these pools were meant to represent the cosmic oceans. Oops. And once we're on level 3, and we're going to get a shot inside of this main temple. So again, we'll get a closer shot, but this is currently a Buddha statue. Originally, it would have been a statue of Vishnu, and these are people that have come to pay their respects to Buddha here. So there's a statue of Buddha, and here is, unfortunately, a common sight throughout the temple is graffiti. Now, this isn't, I'm not calling out current people that do this maybe this year or last year or the year before. That certainly happens. But I found some from French explorers. I mean, they had the year, 200-300 years ago. They're carving their names in here. So it's definitely not something only people do today. So people have been doing this for a long, long time. They've been coming here and carving their names into the temple. But it's definitely not something we want to do when we visit places anywhere today, really, but especially historical places. You never want to deface anywhere. And as we get a shot, this is out of level 3, so we're high up, and you can kind of give you a sense. It's a really long ways between where we first walked in. This was the west gate, and the moat, remember, is roughly 200 meters further past that. So it's a really long walk to get in here. And you can imagine, use your imaginations here, but all of this land in between the west gate and the temple itself would have been a bustling city. That means it would have been a very active city, lots of people, markets out there. What did the Khmer people do? There would have been probably boar fights, chicken fights going on, which was common during those times as forms of entertainment as well. And then obviously there were agrarian people growing food, agriculture would have been happening outside of the city as well. So you'll have to use your imagination a little bit to kind of visualize that. And let's walk down back to the front and remember that room between the first and second levels of 1,000 Buddhas. And if we go around, you can kind of see where it gets its name. So all of these statues of Buddha. And you'll notice right here, here's a Buddha and this is quite common in places around the world, especially places that were abandoned for a while. But sometimes people have come in the past and stolen either heads or hands of Buddha statues that maybe they deemed valuable. And again, it is an active temple, so you will see people that come here not only for to see the beautiful temple of Angkor Wat for the historical purposes, but people come here today, and there are monks you will find here that people come to get bracelets from them and blessings from them as well. And we're going to go ahead and head back in just to show you East Gate. If you remember at the very beginning, I said the temple was never finished. And so remember the moat that we crossed, and we crossed on that stone bridge? Well, this is the bridge on the back end. So you can see it was never completed. And on the back end, or the east side, is just a dirt causeway that you go over today. And we'll head to the east gate and check it out, because this is a great example of what Angkor Wat would have looked like a few hundred years ago before reconstructing most of the temple. Definitely heavier wooded on the back end. This is the lesser visited side of the temple than the west gate. And after we visit the east gate, we're going to visit here. So this is right in front. This is back on the west side, but right off to the northwest side, this is where you can come buy souvenirs, refreshments, food when you're here, because you can really, I came here for 2 whole days straight, and it's hard to see. You can't really see everything here. It's a gigantic place. All right, so we're walking from the main temple back to the east gate.
Right now, we're outside of the East Gate, or another way to put it, we're behind Angkor Wat right now. If we look off this way, we have evidence that the temple was never finished, because this causeway going across the moat is only dirt. It was never completed with any stone.
Also, furthermore, when we look at this stone, remember those, all the earlier stone that we've seen up until now is beautifully either decorated or smoothed, very flat. Well, here we get to see just the chisel engraving. So this is just the rough. They gave it a basic square shape. They would put it in place before they would finish all of the final work on the stone block. So this one was never completed. Also, here's a great piece of evidence for early reconstruction. So this is an iron bar that we can see here that the stone is kind of breaking outwards on itself. So someone just took a iron rod and kind of trying to hold the stone into place, and actually used a bit of concrete to actually hold it there. And so you see much of this around. So this is early reconstruction methods. This was done by the French. This was a French colony, and the French did this on many of the temples in Southeast Asia. And but today you can't do that. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and in order to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you can only use materials that were originally used, and so you can add new blocks to replace broken ones. However, the catch is you have to use blocks that came from the original quarry, so you can't use blocks from a different location. So it has to come from the original quarry there. All right, and so you'll see that quite often. And here we look down, and what always fascinates me is how do they move these giant blocks? And one of the theories here is, you can see in the East Gate lots of examples, is they had 4 holes in most of the blocks, and what they would do in these holes is they would basically shove giant wooden pegs into these holes, and then you could wrap ropes around them. And so in this part of the world, they used elephants' power. So they had Asian elephants to help them pull giant blocks. And it's also believed that they would float these down rivers from the quarries. And part of having that moat around the temple is they could actually, once they got them to the moat, they could kind of float it around to the side that that block was needed at. So that's another one of the thoughts of how they built this temple. So here's some sights and sounds of the souvenir shops. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to use the bathroom, and you pay to use the bathroom. And a lot of people are surprised to hear this, especially if you happen to live in the US. But in many countries around the world, you pay to use the bathroom. And it sounds weird to some people, but in some respects, it makes sense. That's what pays for to keep it clean and to keep it upkept. And in many places in New York City today, if you go to New York City, it's hard to find a public restroom. It's almost impossible. You have to go into private businesses like McDonald's or Starbucks to even find a bathroom. So it is kind of weird, but at the same time, it kind of works. So it doesn't cost a lot. And once we walk in, you'll see in much of Southeast Asia, many times, I'm going to turn the camera off while I use the bathroom. But a lot of people were surprised to learn that there's usually a tub of water. It's a bucket of water or a tub. It's sometimes like this bathroom, it was a tub built in, and it's always full of water right beside a toilet. And the reason is because they don't flush. They don't have like water running to the toilets that you flush the handle that gets rid of all your waste. Instead, you take a ladle or giant bowl and you dump water into your toilet, and that's what makes it flush. And so that's a little fun way to end. And this is the backside again, just to show you a couple of things. So we can see some scaffolding that's on the side. So these are current projects. Either there are scholars who are studying the temple, or they are partaking in reconstruction efforts. And again, up close on a lot of the reliefs, this is from the galleries, and many of them, usually if it's a god or one center part of the relief, you can kind of see where lots of shorter people have come by, where you can see it gets more polished where people touch their hands on the wall. So that's kind of unique to see there. Here's a shot on the left side. So this is the front or the west side. So we walked across the Rainbow Bridge to go in the temple that way. On each side of the Rainbow Bridge, there is a pond. And if this shot right here looks familiar to you, it's probably because you've probably seen Tomb Raider, and there's a shot in that movie when Laura Croft or Angelina Jolie meets a monk, and it's right here at this location with Angkor Wat in the background. All right, and that is Angkor Wat, the city temple. Okay, so don't forget, if you can send in your questions. If you guys have any questions, I would love to answer your questions. So either send them in to #GeoShow, or you can type them in the Zoom chat box that you're looking in the show right now. And it looks like one of our classrooms had to head out earlier, and I don't know which one of you guys were logged in, but if you guys want to play our quiz, then you're going to need to get logged in over at Kahoot. And again, we'll go ahead and play that out in case you guys have to run out early as well. So again, to get logged in and play, these questions are worth points for an opportunity to win our postcard from me from the Learn Around the World Studios. On any browser, just go to kahoot.it, and you can enter in that game pin 153140. Again, that is 153140. Enter in a school-appropriate nickname, and you will be hooked right up to our game. All right, so we're going to go ahead and play. So hopefully you're logged in by now, and remember, all questions are worth points from here on out. So our first question of the day is, how many levels does the temple have? Red 1, blue 4, yellow 2, or green 3? All right, it is three levels. 3 levels, great job. All right, next question coming up. Angkor Wat was built for which Hindu god? Is it red Ganesh, blue Shiva, yellow Brahma, or green Vishnu? Oh, okay, remember, it's Vishnu. Vishnu was the god that Angkor Wat was built for. All right, winner is still in the lead. What country is Angkor Wat located in? Is it red Laos, blue Thailand, yellow Cambodia, or green Vietnam? All right, it is Cambodia. Great job. Winner's still in the lead. Looks like we have one player. Which direction does Angkor Wat face? Is it the west or the east? West or the east? All right, it faces the west. Great job. And last question, Angkor was the capital city of what empire? The Aztec Empire, the Mongolian Empire, the Khmer Empire, or the Roman Empire? All right, it was the Khmer Empire. Great job. And today's winner, dun, 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 is winners. So if you are winner's teacher, please make sure you turn in your school address. Give me your school address so I can send a postcard from the Learn Around the World Studios to your winning classroom. And you can give me your school address at learnaroundtheworld.com/prize. So just go to our website /prize to make sure you give me your address. It's the only place I'm accepting it this year. All right, so for everyone else, if you're still with us, get those questions sent into us, and I would love to answer your students' questions. And if we don't see any, then if you do have to run, don't worry, you can leave the show at any points, but we are here for as long as you do have questions. And we'll show you a couple of bonus things because we mentioned it earlier as we wait a few minutes for any questions coming in. But I'm going to show you some places outside of Angkor Wat. So some of the other temples that are located around the complex of Angkor, or in the temple grounds of Angkor. All right, so there are lots of temples found around Angkor, so not just Angkor Wat. So Angkor Wat's right here if we're looking at it from the satellite image, but there are other places, other temples, other cities that existed during the empire. So it's very, here's some shots that you'll see. Not all of them are as upkept as Angkor Wat, the most famous one of them all. So you'll see trees growing out of them. Here's another famous shot that was, again, you'll see some of these images that may look familiar to you, but the entire tree just swallows up some of these locations. And some of these trees are very big. I mean, I'm 6'1" tall, and you can kind of see just the roots going into the ground there. Is right at the tree is definitely, it's got to be around 8-9 feet, maybe even a little higher, going up into the tree. Here's another famous shot from Tomb Raider. So Laura Croft or Angelina Jolie came out of this doorway in one of the shots in Tomb Raider. And here we get to see another one. The roots actually are just going through the wall of that temple there. It's kind of wild how these trees grow. You can kind of see here when they really just swallow up and take they just move the blocks, so they can really wreak havoc the trees. And this is what happens in many places, especially in tropical environments like Cambodia, when you have cities or stone structures that were left unattended. When you have vegetation that grows on them, they will actually grow in between the cracks of the stones and will knock things over, will split stone, and the whole thing just kind of crumbles. And here we get to see some evidence of that, where some places you can't even get into because the entire ceilings have crumbled down into passageways. And here's a smaller one that you can just see the stones. This one hasn't been reconstructed at all. You can just see that stones have fallen over all over the place. And even here inside, where it's just a huge pile of rubble. And so you'll often find areas that are roped off that you, with signs saying unsafe. You know, it's not a good idea to walk in there. There we go, unsafe area. I would agree with that sign. And here's an interesting one. So you can actually see here some of the links that have been taken to keep some of these temples upright is to actually take this wooden brace and put some concrete footings here on the ground to actually hold it up from falling over. And it is truly a wonderful place of the world to go in and explore these temples and go in and out of it. It's like you're in an entirely different world. And it's definitely, you have to use your imagination when you're walking around, but these places were not always just ruins and places void of civilization, but they had, these were cities that people lived in. So just if you went to a city today, New York City or London, Seoul, Shanghai, any of these places, and people are around everywhere going in and out of things. Same thing here, this hallway, people would have been going up and down, restaurants, all sorts of things. This was just the front grounds of one of the cities and just would have been bustling with people and commerce, markets. This is the second largest temple that is in the Angkor Park. And this is Bayon. And this one was built in the 12th century. And it has over 200 giant Buddha faces. Now, the Khmer Empire, depending on who the king was at a time, remember we had, you may ask yourself, why would it switch over to a Buddhist temple? Well, their kings would go back and forth. One king may be a Hindu follower, then the next king maybe was a Buddhist follower. So they built different temples that were built for different different religions. And this one here at Bayan was built for Buddha, and there are 200 of these giant Buddha faces all over the temple. And so these are giant heads, Buddha heads that are like 6-7 feet tall, that are on these towers. And they're all around, and you may have seen pictures of those before. Definitely a well-known, popular temple to go to. All right, well, it looks like most people have moved on from now, and so for anyone watching the recording that couldn't make it today with your classroom, thanks for hanging out with us today, learning a little bit about this part of the world in Cambodia. Until next time, I'm GOB. You've been watching Learn Around the World's Geo Show. Keep exploring, guys. It's a great big world out there.